Um, okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'm sure I will do this right. Okay. Hmm. Ay, ay, ay. Okay.
These are all teaching moments, right?
Oh my gosh. Can folks see my screen now and not my
Yes.
notes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yay. So hello everyone, and thank you again to Jill and Denise. I'll have to make sure to thank her via email for having me to present today. I'm really excited to share this work with you all. My name is Hallie Riley, as Jill mentioned. I know most of you, but if you don't know me, I am a data services specialist on in the Research Data Services Department here at the GSU Library, and I'm really looking forward to sharing our experiences using micro-credentialing and digital badges to promote data literacy and learning here. Um, this program was definitely a team effort, and the wheels were rolling before I even came to GSU. So I definitely have to acknowledge the rest of the RDS team, including Mandy and Ashley and Joel, who I saw on the call, as well as support from Jason Puckett. So he really helped me personally understand like what the heck a digital badge was and what this badger thing was. And so tell you all about that. Okay, so I'd like to start with an overview of how micro-credentialing and digital badges are used and really what they are, and then tell you how we implemented a digital badging program to teach data skills here at GSU. Then I'll give you an overview of our program's successes over the initial 7 months, share some challenges we've experienced and lessons learned, and then talk about next steps. Then I can answer any questions y'all have about the program, and I'd love to have a discussion back to Jill's introduction about whether and how you can use some of the lessons we've learned to implement similar programs if that's of interest to you. So I did kind of a
Just quick, just to add also, I'm going to be monitoring chat. So, do you want to be taking questions as you go, or would you rather?
Absolutely, yeah. So feel free to pop it in the chat or just unmute and ask me if you have a question.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, Jill. So for this next section, I did kind of a deep dive into the history of micro-credentialing and kind of what these things are and why you might use them. And it was helpful for me to kind of understand our program in that larger context. So hopefully these next few slides aren't too boring. So micro-credentials are certifications that demonstrate mastery of discrete, generally short-term kind of specific learning goals. In contrast with, say, a college degree, a micro-credential would demonstrate successful mastery of a very specific skill or, again, learning objective. So like use of a software package in our case, or maybe something super concrete like the completion of a CPR course. Micro-credentials are increasingly used in primary, secondary, and higher education. And in higher ed, which is the context that I think is most interesting to us, they can be used to demonstrate mastery of an in-demand skill to a potential employer or say, graduate school. They can be used to support career readiness for graduating students and address those perceived career readiness gaps that we all hear a lot about. Micro-credentials are often offered as self-directed and more informal learning opportunities outside of a classroom. So micro-credentials are also used during workplace onboarding and in community settings like public libraries. So I just thought this was a cute example from the ALA on how one library in Illinois used micro-credentialing and digital badges, which I'll talk about the little images specifically in a moment, to incentivize summer reading in one Illinois public library. And I think I was talking to Mandy about this, and I said I would personally always prefer the incentive that I was offered as a child, which was a personal pan pizza with the Book It program. So shout out to my 80s babies. Um, so digital badges, these cute little digital tokens that you see, are basically visual proof of having achieved a micro-credential. So they're the equivalent of a diploma or transcript to a college degree. They're digital tokens that kind of emerge from the idea of scout badges or the digitalization of paper certificates that you might get once you've completed a workshop. They can also be seen as an example of gamification in education. So the idea of leveling up in a video game, especially when they're part of a learning progression. So they allow users to kind of show the receipts in common parlance, providing proof that a learning experience has been undertaken. So it's kind of a concrete proof that I have really gone through this workshop. Importantly, in order to really serve as such proof, digital badges are shareable and should have embedded metadata, and that makes them verifiable. So I'll talk more about that in a moment. So in the same way that I could print a transcript out that I made in Microsoft Word, and that would likely not be accepted as official or genuine, a digital badge without such metadata may not be recognized or accepted. Oh, and that I like talking about showing the receipts. So when I saw that in one of the articles, it made me giggle a little. And then I pulled a lot for this background from these two articles cited here. So open badging refers to a format for metadata for digital badges that's standardized. And so in order to be seen as legitimate and authenticated, digital badges should follow this open data format. So the Open Badges format was originally developed by the Mozilla Foundation, like Firefox, with funding from the MacArthur Foundation back between like 2009 and 2013. So I was a little surprised that there's kind of more of a decade of history of these things. But since 2017, the IMS Global Learning Initiative manages these standards. They're published and on the next slide, we'll look at what exactly the metadata should include. So again, open badges, if you follow these specifications, they're then verifiable, shareable, and verifiable because they contain detailed information about the achievement and what the recipient did to earn the badge. So users can then compile and share them, and they should be shareable across platforms as long as they adhere to these standards. So in 2020, according to this Open Badges report published by IMS Global Learning Initiative, there were 25 different software platforms that were identified that supported Open Badges, including Badger, which is the platform we use here at GSU. And according to a 2020 IMS Global Learning Consortium report, there have been over 4 million open badges issued since like the beginning of time. And that only 12 of the 25 companies that they surveyed for that report responded. So that number should theoretically be higher. And so more information about these metadata for, we're librarians, those of you who might be interested in that, can be found here. These are the basic categories that should be included. And I liked this slide because it kind of demonstrated visibly the difference between just a little image that I can create and issue versus something that can be, has more information embedded in it and is thus considered more official or verifiable. So there are a few philosophical questions raised by the micro-credentialing paradigm in the digital badge issuing, process. So these are just some things that I've kind of thought about since we started undertaking this program that other folks might consider. The first question that comes up to me is what do these things mean? What does having a little digital badge on my LinkedIn page or a line on my CV saying that I've earned this micro credential, what does that mean to an employer or another consumer, my intended audience? So are they truly seen as demonstrating mastery? Does the intended audience really care about these things? There is an emerging literature on this, and it seems kind of mixed about whether these are valued or not, or to the extent to which they are valued. Um, Another question as badge issuers we might ask ourselves is how do we ensure that the quality of our content leading to the badge issuing is up to snuff? So does someone who um, do they demonstrate the competencies that they purport to show? So in the context of our program, is someone, for example, who finishes our our advanced badge program really, would they really be seen as an advanced user of art in our studio when it came down to workplace requirements? And then consistency across issuers, right? So as someone who receives the SAS badge that I developed here at GSU, is that comparable to a similar micro-credential from another institution? And then a question for those of us in higher ed and specifically in academic libraries might ask ourselves are what skills are important to promote for that kind of amorphous concept of career readiness? And then what is our role as academic librarians in filling these gaps and providing these learning experiences as opposed to, academic departments or classroom teachers? So our program, what have we done? Or I guess before I kind of move on, does anyone have questions at this point about any of the contextual stuff I've just discussed? Book it was the best. I would always take a pizza over a digital badge as much as I'm kind of into these things now. Okay, so as many of you know, probably everyone, the RDS Research Data Services Department is here to support the GSU research community. So we provide workshops on data-related skills like the use of data analysis software, or skills like data visualization. And we also provide one-on-one consultations and some other services, but the workshops are really at the heart of the digital badge program. In January 2022, we implemented our digital badging program, and this was made to replace our former data certification program. So here's an image that Mandy created for our website, letting users know that the former data certification program was no longer um, in effect, and we were using this new badging program. So I believe that the badge program has kind of improved upon that former program. The prior program was attendance based. Learners had to attend 5 workshops. There was no learning assessment, and after attending, participants received a PDF certificate, which did not include the kind of metadata included in open badges. So again, we believe the badge program has improved upon that former program in key ways. First, with the attendance-based program, especially with the asynchronous options that we've been offering since COVID, we really couldn't know if a learner had logged into a workshop and then gone and taken a nap, right? They didn't have to, we've integrated an assessment now, so learners have to score 100% on assessments, though they have as many chances as possible. So they are required to do something to demonstrate that they have been paying attention to the content. And finally, the digital badges are issued automatically by Badger once students fulfill a requirement. So I know that compiling student data, checking attendance, and creating the certificates had previously been a very time consuming and frankly annoying task that Mandy and other RDS team members had to do in the past. And then the certificates they created weren't kind of easily shareable the way open badges are. Our program has 2 tracks, the data literacy series and the software encoding trainings. The data literacy series is designed as a progressive micro-credentialing series where students advance through learning to the final goal of getting their data literacy badge. It's primarily targeted to those new to data literacy concepts, including undergraduates. The software and training coding, on the other hand, is very customizable, allowing learners to earn badges in the specific skill areas that they will benefit from. So, for example, if you're a qualitative researcher, you can take the NVivo training and just ignore all the quant stuff. Or you could challenge yourselves to develop quant skills in this informal environment, depending on the learner preference. I know these images are pretty small. We'll look at the specific badges that folks can earn momentarily. And oh, okay. I was like, why is this a blank slide? So program implementation required the integration of several platforms, including WebEx for the live online workshop instructions. And you can see from the beginning of this session how skilled I am at using WebEx. Then we used Camtasia and Kaltura for recording, editing, and posting the pre-recorded sessions. We use the Canvas learning management system for hosting the actual course content, which we'll look at. We'll look at the Canvas page in a moment. In Stacks, which is what the GSU calls Canvas when it's used for micro-credentialing, I think. That's always been a little confusing to me. And then the Badger platform for badge issuing and Qualtrics for evaluation. So you can see that kind of just getting all these platforms to talk together could is a potential challenge to setting up such a program. Luckily, Canvas integrates Badger within the LMS, so we didn't have to figure out how to make these two services talk to each other. And then super luckily, we had Jason Puckett to explain this all to us, especially kind of the second row here, how this all worked. Program development and implementation was time consuming. So there is no way around that when reflecting on the program. So the data literacy content was newly developed by Ashley Rockwell as part of the Pitt UN funded PIDLIT initiative. And so all of that content had to be recorded. If you have a chance to check out Ashley's content, it's like absolutely beautifully professionally done. And there's background music. It really kind of puts the rest of us to shame. But so props to you, Ashley, for that. And then the software and coding content, on the other hand, was mostly existing. The rest of the team had been teaching these workshops for years, but we did have to go through the process of recording and editing and uploading it. For me, since I was new to GSU, I developed the SAS badge content for the first time. And since the previous data certification program did not involve assessments, those were all newly developed. So we had to go through the content and come up with a series of multiple choice questions that we thought someone who had gone through would be expected to know the answers to. Recording became very time consuming for me because once I realized that I could edit out my ums and my awkward turns of phrase in Camtasia, I got a little obsessive about doing it. And then I also procrastinated a lot because I hate hearing my own voice. So that was a personal problem. But then developing the Canvas page was actually really time consuming. So just migrating the content there and then developing and checking the assessments and the pages and the links and editing and tweaking and testing. Surprisingly, the badge, linking the badge issuing and automated that was totally easy. Um, but the rest of it was time consuming. And I'll also add Mandy was the one who created all the images used in our badges. So I know that took some time and creative energy for her. And then, I can't say how wonderful the team was to work with and how useful Jason was as well as we just went through this process of, really iterative checking and checking. Unfortunately, I didn't track the time I spent developing the Canvas page and wish I had just to be able to quantify how much time it really did take us. So if we see, I'm just going to show you all our page. So this is the Canvas LMS here. And you can see we have two separate courses, the data literacy series and the software and training series. So within the data literacy series, I'm going to go in student view. Oh gosh, of course. One more time. Okay, cool. So this is what students would see when they logged in. So we started with these overviews. We tried to be really clear that they should read these in order to know what they have to do. So we tried again to be really clear about the steps that folks have to take to set up the program in a logical order. And then we've embedded the videos directly within the modules for this one. And then once you click through them all, you'll come to a Canvas quiz. And when you have as much time as you need, and you can take the quiz as many times as possible. I mean, as needed. And then once you submit the quiz and score 100%, then your badge will automatically be issued, and you'll be able to see it here. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, I guess if you click student view twice, then it works. So then the data, oh, this is the same thing. I'm sorry about that. I often get confused when I try to click on one course over the other. Okay, well, it's not letting me get back to my, okay, software encoding. Okay, I guess I don't have access to view this. I don't know what's going on here, but this is a nice example of, some of the technology
It might be
quirks.
because, sorry, this is Manny.
Logged in
It
as a
might be because you're in
student.
student view. I bet if you switch back out of student view,
Let's
then I think
see.
you'll be able to get to it through,
Okay,
I would think.
fingers crossed. And this will probably tell me it's not available the first time. Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so you can see with this, thank you, Mandy, the software and training coding, the modules are separated by topics. So at the top, we kind of have overview information, and then each of these is broken down, and students can choose which specific modules they want to complete to earn their badges. So you can also see we're kind of forcing students to go through in a sequential order. They have the option of, we have information about accessing various software packages, our research guides, and then links to the recorded workshops, and then next steps. So we try to be really um, clear as to the process. And Mandy just added, so the Canvas page is supported by Seatlow. So we've also worked with them in terms of getting this all up. So that's our basic, that is our basic Canvas page. And so how has the program been received? As of July 2022, we've had 154 unique learners enrolled in data literacy with 50 badges awarded, and 239 with 144 badges awarded in the software encoding series. So our most frequently rewarded badge is, or issued badge, is the Data Visualization Ready badge, followed by the R Basics. So those are the two that have been in most high demand. And the data literacy badge has been awarded 50 times. So we're actually in the process. I've explained that the data literacy course is meant to be a progressive learning experience. And Ashley Rockwell is the right person to talk to about this particular badge and course. But we're rolling out these 3 additional progressive badges this fall. 175 users have completed our workshop evaluation. So this is about the content and quality of the actual workshops themselves. 87% did them as self-directed learning rather than part of a course. That is originally what we've envisioned this program to be, but we do know that several professors have assigned badges as parts of courses. And the Data Jam course offered by the graduate school this summer also assigned these content. So it may just be that those folks aren't, filling out our evaluation. Our learners were primarily graduate students, over 60% graduate students, and almost all from the undergrad campus. So while we have 38 departments represented at this campus, there's really very limited use from faculty, staff, and perimeter students. And especially the perimeter students, I think, is a, kind of perhaps an underrepresented population in this that we could market to specifically. 98% of users rated the quality as good or fair of those who answered the question. The remaining, or sorry, good or very good. The remaining two users rated the quality as fair, so we were really happy about that statistic. The open text responses we need to go through as a team and do some more in-depth analysis of, but primarily they were positive, though I would like to take some time to think about those that suggest areas for improvement. So some folks, it's tough because learners are kind of all over the place coming to this. So some folks said it was too complicated and they wanted basic stuff. Some people said it was too fast or too simple for them. So there's always going to be, when you have a self-directed, optional learning experience, people coming in with different skill sets. But I'd like to, as a team, kind of dig into those and see where user comments kind of point us to directions for improvement. So we have separate evaluations for the workshop content and then one for the badge program specifically. And unfortunately, only 11 users, and you saw there were like 230 that completed the software encoding training alone. So of those, only 11 users responded to the questions about the badge program specifically. These were the badges that were earned by these folks. They were all graduate students from computer information systems, public health, accounting, and criminal justice, and none participated as a formal assignment. They came to the program with the intention of earning the badge, but again, it's hard to know how many of our learners overall are approaching our workshops with this intention versus seeing it as an extra perk or just deciding that it's not something that's worth their time to go through the extra steps. They're learning about the program from our website, digital signs, emails. This was a question on the workshop program, workshop evaluation too, and the results were pretty similar. A lot emails from professors and stuff like that. And then I was proud of this. 100% rated the experience of earning the badge as good or very good. Because there were so few comments, I could post all of the ones we get. The first was very positive, and the second one pointed to an area that Mandy and I have been talking about since I saw this comment. Area for improvement is definitely making these more accessible, in this case with transcripts for deaf of heart and hard of hearing students. So what were the successes of the program? Overall, we did see a very positive reception from our users. People seem to like the program and feel that the content of the workshops is good. So that's probably the most important thing to me. Post the course setup, now that it's implementation, we have found the automatic badge issuing to be overall super simple. It doesn't require any steps from us most of the time. And I'll talk about one exception in a moment. And I think that we're able to reach, this is just more of the new normal kind of comment, that we're able to reach a lot of learners with asynchronous and online options. So that I think is a really nice thing. Challenges that I would share with folks who are consider implementing a program would be the setup time. As I mentioned, I think that maybe I underestimated that, having set up Canvas courses before. So the integrating of the different platforms, we have experienced just a few technology quirks. So last week we received a email from a student who had completed the R badge requirements, I believe, and had not gotten a badge issued, and there was a badger update that we didn't, receive notice of, but when we went into Canvas, it suggested the update, and then once I did that, it automatically issued those badges. So that was an area in which I thought there could have been better communication from the folks who run the platform, but that has only been one, time we've experienced a quirk like that. So the evaluation data to me really indicated that we should perhaps market beyond the Atlanta campus grad students, as mentioned, to perimeter students and more undergrads, as well as staff and faculty who could benefit from this learning and may not know about it. For me, I found that my initial SAS content I created was too elementary, so I'd like to update it, but I've kind of been putting that off a little until after summer because it means really just kind of stripping and revamping that whole page, doing new recordings, doing new assessments. So that's something I'm planning to do in the fall. And then there are just these badge related philosophical questions that I referenced. How you know, to what extent should we be kind of jumping into this badge paradigm? Um, are our students, you know, with only 11 students responding about the actual badges, it's hard to know what value students place on these. So looking forward, I love systematic reviews, so I'd like to do one looking at the use of micro-credentialing and badging within teaching within data learning, and see what other programs have done and how that, you know, what the value of using these programs is in that field. Again, we're going to improve accessibility. I kind of already had said over all these next few bullets, but we want to think about which departments and campuses aren't being representative. And this is just kind of a question for our team. Do we want to do a more formal evaluation, um, whether it's interviews with a subset of students or something like that? So it looks like we have about 10 minutes for questions, if folks have any, or if you'd like to talk out, you know, any ways that you might implement micro-credentialing in your, um, you know, topical areas.
Yeah, I've got a question actually. And this may be like a whole can of worms, so you may, but and it then sort of relates to that philosophical question is, do you, I mean, are there studies that have talked or maybe you all have talked with, I know because you've done like the data and the ATL series. Do you have any sense of how employers view these badges? I mean, have there been studies of that? Because that's something I always wonder about. Like we can give them badges, but like are employers going to look at that and go, okay?
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely for the first time kind of it was a benefit of, you know, being invited to give this talk is that I really dug into the literature for the first
Yeah,
time. And so my under so that's to say I don't know the literature like the back of my hand, but there have been
sure.
a few studies and it's kind of it looked like it was a mixed bag. Like it was and I can pull that literature and give you a better answer just because it's something I want to dig more into.
Uh-huh.
So the question is, I'm not exactly sure, and I don't
Yeah.
think the literature is really there that we have a clear answer, which is another reason why I'm interested in doing a systematic review, at least to see what the literature looks like in our area. But definitely,
Yeah, sure.
again, when I talk about the philosophical questions, that's definitely
Yeah,
a
because
big one.
I could see, we're preparing them for this, but like if you don't, if employers are not within those platforms, do you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
they may be like, okay,
So I had reached out to a couple of students too because you can share them on your LinkedIn. It looks really good. Um, and I had just kind of searched like LinkedIn, I don't know, using like GSU Data Badge, and I found a few students, but I emailed them at like 10 o'clock last night. Just nothing like waiting till the last minute. So
yeah, no,
I didn't get consent from anyone to share
yeah,
screenshots of their LinkedIn, but I would have liked to do that just so you could see what it looks like um,
okay.
when it's shared externally.
I can man this Mandy like say something that well I will say that like good job, Halley, looking at the literature because I'm gonna fess up that I hadn't looked at crap about any of this stuff. But I could say like a couple years ago when CETLO, which was once CETL at that time, but anyway, Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning and Online Education, was wanting to kind of pilot badges, and they reached out to us as a potential pilot, but at that time the person who was trying to do those really wanted this gets back to is kind of another like maybe philosophical question of assessment. They wanted the like badges to be tied to like big projects where there would be like no automated way to assess these and things, which of course has benefit because they were like, well, we want them to be able to point to a project that shows like really more in-depth involvement using the software or something like that. And we're and which is great, except very time consuming. And, I at the time and I asked them, I was like, well, do we have any sense of whether employers really even care about these things? And then,
Mhm.
and their answer at that time was like, no, we don't, like we really don't. And so then at that point, at least we were, especially because they were asking for so much investment of basically, we want you to create like projects for students to do, and then you will have to grade them, that I was like, we don't have, especially if we don't know if there's really any quote unquote return on investment for this, we're not doing it. Yeah, but it's definitely, I still not sure, yeah, what the badge itself, like one thing I've had sometimes students in the past, and this was kind of the same situation with the certificates that we used to do for attendance only, as Hallie said. They would ask, sometimes students would be like, well, what should I say these are? Like, what should I,
Mhm.
how should I talk about? I would respond back, well, especially with the attendance, I'm like, it is what it is. It shows that you attended
Mhm.
workshops. And I'm like, now at least it shows that you did complete some kind of learning assessment. But then I would try to say to him, like, in terms of, if you actually get an interview or if you're going to describe them in a cover letter or a CV or a resume, that's what's more important probably than just this physical cute little thing to look at, is that you need to be able to articulate, like, I went out of my way to attend this, like, these extracurricular things, and I learned this, and because I learned these skills, now I will be able to do like X, Y, and Z for you as an employer, or I'm better prepared for, you know, graduate school or something like that. So I think that that's one way I've at least tried to talk to students about representing their potential value beyond just, this is something, a cute little image that I
Mhm.
can share.
Well, and it's kind of also like I mean, every now and then, the university gets excited about the idea of portfolios. And
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
feel like there are some fields where, yeah, I mean, Mandy, I'm sure Pat can talk about the need for portfolios or graphic
Yeah.
design or something. And if you're in a field that needs portfolios, you're probably going to be told that by your professors. But then there is sort of that line. I mean, I'm thinking of, I took CETLO, but when they were still CETLO and turning it CETL and turning into CETLO, I took their mastering online teaching course, and you get a badge for that. And
Hmm.
to me, it was like, I mean, there's a longer story behind that, but I mean, so it's listed on my CV as a thing I did. I don't think I actually, use the little badgy thing or even refer to it. I may say something about a badge depending on if it's in digital measures or whatever, but it really does, for me, it's more like I did this thing. It's
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
similar, I think it's I found it's like a digitalization of like the certificate that, I did a qualitative research methods, week-long workshop, and I got a paper at the end, and I was like, well, what do I do with this now? Like,
yeah,
I
well,
held on to it because I didn't want to throw it away, but
well, the other thing that's I think better about it being like, a badge program for, philosophical or whatever, is that because the university does have like graduate certificate programs, which are more in depth and involve like coursework and projects and that kind of thing. I think it makes sense for this to be badging because then there isn't that confusion. Because I could see an
Yeah.
employer being like, you got this certificate, what is this
what
certificate?
did you learn in that? And
Yeah.
then this
I
is
mean,
like,
like
I learned
I
R.
see that you've got like a graduate certificate in women's studies, which involves like extra coursework, and I
Mhm.
could see like the
Yeah, the
language
language
making
of
more
certi
sense. Yeah,
yeah, and that definitely came up sometimes. I think in our previous certificate, quote unquote, program, the fact that we called it certificate, that sometimes students and other people would interpret it as like what Jill's talking about, more of that,
Yeah.
like
Like a specialization in your
yeah,
program.
I
Yeah.
got a certificate in women's studies, which represents that I got, took 15 credit hours, versus no, this is literally a like certificate little piece of paper type thing. So yeah, I think the badge, just from a branding naming at least, might help with that.
yeah, and I think it
Yeah.
provides some clarity, and also, I mean, just for even for the student too, like the distinction between this isn't that kind of certificate
Yeah.
program where you're,
Mhm.
you're getting a master's in one field and you're adding on some women's studies courses in order to get a certificate in gender studies. I mean, that's different. That's more intensive, And for a
Yeah.
student making a decision like that, a badge program might be what they need as opposed to like a certificate. You know what I mean? Like with the difference in language and branding, they can
Mhm.
make that choice more intelligently.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I don't mean it was unintelligent to have the two different certificate programs, but I could see also being like, oh my gosh, how much work is this data certificate program going to
Yeah.
be in, as
Yeah.
opposed to, what a
Yeah, I think it's also
what a
like
badge allows you
call
to
it what
do.
it is kind of uh,
Yeah.
approach to giving the credentialing. I've also dropped in the chat a few of the articles in a very that I've came up with. Again, this is very non-systematic. Um, Review of the literature about employer value. So it is a very limited literature. There was a systematic review from Eric that I sent the PDF link to. Um, and they have a very small section about employer value, but it's also published in 2015, so I don't even think that, it doesn't seem like the literature has emerged that much, but perceptions of these things may have changed since 2015. I think that's kind of seems like something that I would not be surprised if that happened.
I wonder if that would be something to sort of maybe work collaboratively with like Dan on,
Yeah, I think it could be a
sort of
really
this,
interesting. Yeah.
from the business point of view, how are, our companies or employers, looking at this, especially in light of the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If anyone else is interested in undertaking such a project, well, we haven't asked Dan yet, but definitely feel free to email me. That's a really good idea, Jill. Do other folks have questions? I know we're at time now, but I am free for the rest of the hour. Well, thank you all for coming and listening. I will drop my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out if any other questions come up, or thank you all for coming.
And just so you all know, we have a final slide at the end of our general slide collection with everybody's name and email address also. So we have multiple ways of getting out that information.
Thanks for
Thanks,
that, Jill.
Holly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording. I have stopped recording. Not talk freely. We're scheduled for another break, to be back at 2 o'clock for our last